Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. And welcome to the live stream, the podcast where I answer your questions about how to get hired, how to do a job search campaign, how to answer job interview questions, how to write a resume, how to go about networking, the different methods of job search, all that kind of thing. Blah, 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 blah. I was worried this morning I might not have been able to get my hair perfect, but then I did, so I'm in a good mood. I need one of those buttons where you can press and you hear a voice that say, "Perfection achieved." I will press that a lot. So welcome. This is brought to you by the members of my YouTube channel and my Patreons. Thank you so much for your support. You guys are awesome. And we are going to answer your questions. So if you see the chat box, if you're watching this on a device or on your phone or on your desktop or laptop, get in the chat, ask me a question, whatever you are wondering about, whatever you're struggling with in your career, and I will do my best to help you out. I just wanted to lead off today while we're waiting for the questions to roll on in with a poll question that you guys answered a couple of weeks ago that I thought the answer was quite interesting. This is the poll question right here. The question was, methods to find a job include, and then there were some options: networking with one's boss, networking with gatekeepers. And for those of you who don't know what gatekeepers are, it's like receptionists, those kind of people. Networking with recruiters, networking with hiring managers, or all of the above. Now, I suppose in a technical sense, yes, all of the above, which is what 81% of you guys said. So technically, but in practice, I would have answered differently. I would have answered this one here, networking with hiring managers. That's, in my experience, far more useful to network with them. Networking recruiters, in my experience, is almost useless because you have to contact the recruiter anyway when you apply for a job. So they will have your contact information and your resume, and they will know who you are, technically. And they will add that to their database or their Rolodex, if you will, their mental virtual Rolodex, their list of contacts. Gatekeepers, not really. I mean, listen, everything happens some of the time, but the likelihood is that that will not get you too far. Same with networking with one's boss. Yes, occasionally they hear of something, but, in terms of like that as a job search strategy, probably not. But this by far, networking with hiring managers, by far, in my opinion, which I recommend to people, that is by far the most likely, because hiring managers are the people that decide who gets hired and who doesn't. They're the ones that decide that they need to hire in the first place. So there you go. But one of those rare occasions where what most of you guys said, I kind of took a little bit of exception to. I wouldn't have answered that way. But that's just me. And the award for the first person in the chat goes to Yasser Idar. Says, "Hi, thank you for your insightful videos." You're absolutely welcome, Yasser. Thank you for watching and being here. If you have any questions, I will be happy to help you. And while we're waiting for questions, also a reminder, if you have been looking for a job for quite a while actively, you have been between jobs, and you're a little bit lost. You don't know kind of what to do. The things you're doing don't really appear to be going anywhere fast. I have a course, my Get Hired course right here. There's a link in the description to it. This is basically all my recommendations from beginning to end on how to do a job search campaign, the different things you can do, how it all works. And I also have in the description, I have a link to a video that gives you the details of what's in the course and how it works, so you are fully informed if you want to go in that direction. Excuse me. And also, I want to apologize in advance because it is raining. It's actually kind of a bit of a thunderstorm where I am right now. And whenever that happens, you occasionally get the internet going out, which means that my live stream will be interrupted. So if that happens, that's what's going on, and I will try and reestablish the stream as soon as possible. Vivian is here. Hi, Bill. Now, Vivian, I believe, told me the correct pronunciation of your name last time. It was, I think, Viviane or Vivianie or something like that. I'm sorry. I have already apologized for this profusely last time, but I'm terrible with names. So hello to everybody that's here. There's 21 of you guys here. Get in the chat. Ask me some questions. Let's get into this and see if I can answer some of your questions with regard to how to get a job. On this channel, I talk about various topics that are all interconnected. By far, the most popular topic is how to get a job. So answering job interview questions, how to get interviews, what recruiters are looking for, what interviewers are looking for, that kind of thing. I also do a live stream on side hustles, because side hustles are another income stream, a potential income stream for people. So you might work a day job, but you might have something going on the side, something of your making. And that's an incredible thing to do if you ever want to go in that direction. It's a way of sort of dipping your toe into the pool of entrepreneurship. And that can be a fantastic opportunity because it means that you are no longer dependent on employers for your livelihood. If you have great ideas and you do a really good job, you can make a fortune doing it. You can break through any kind of ceiling or cap on your income that you might have in a conventional career. And it allows you to turn your creative vision or your hobby into a money-making venture. So it's great on a number of levels. So check that out every week. I do a live stream on that on Mondays. And also I started something yesterday, a new live stream called Leadership, where we talk about more advanced sort of management type stuff. That might be of use if you are ambitious and you want to climb the corporate ladder and become an upper middle manager or executive manager. Some of the skills and tactics and techniques and concepts that are used to do that job well, in my opinion, based on my experience in my training. So check those out. Okay. In the chat, let's see, we have Eugene. Eugene says, hello, how to impress during the Zoom interview with a hiring manager? Well, there's several facets to that, Eugene. First of all, the most important thing is make sure you look good and sound good, right? That would be the most obvious thing. If you're on an interview, a video interview call. First of all, I did do a video entirely dedicated to how to do a good video interview. So check that out on my channel. But make sure that you are dressed appropriately, which usually means dress up a notch if you are unsure of how to dress. Always err on the side of going a little bit more formal, a little bit more professional than you probably would be able to get away with, because that will make a better first impression. Okay? That's kind of the general rule. Now, in going beyond what like your grooming and how you dress, make sure that you are familiar with the technology. There's nothing more amateur than somebody who doesn't know how to use their own computer technology, whether it's your phone or if you've got a laptop or a desktop, people that fumble with the technology. So if you're using Zoom or whatever teleconferencing software for the first time, get on there ahead of time. Make sure you understand how to use it. Okay, do a couple of practice calls or whatever you need to do so that you don't come across like an amateur for that reason. Okay, because that will negate a whole bunch of good things that you might do. Okay, and then thirdly, have good social interaction skills. Don't look like you're having a horrible time. Kind of look pleasant. Like, I'm trying to look pleasant now. You try and look a little bit happy and comfortable and like you're happy to be there and you're enjoying yourself. Don't look nervous or look like you're in living hell when, you're talking to somebody. All that kind of stuff. Try and be charismatic, try and be likable. Try to get conversations going rather than just, sit there stoically and respond to questions. and so forth. And then just have done preparation. I mean, that pretty much is the big stuff. Hopefully, if you do that, that'll get you started in the right direction. But as I say, I have videos on each of those sort of different things on my YouTube channel. So check out some of those videos if you want to go deeper. MA is here. MA says, hello, Bill. What can you advise to help prevent stuttering during interviews? I also tend to be overcome by anxiety. Okay, now listen, I'm not a speech therapist, so I probably wouldn't be able to give you the best advice on that because it's not my area. I can speak to kind of the second part, not the stuttering part, but the anxiety part, okay? Nothing combats or eliminates anxiety like confidence, okay? If you feel that, you genuinely feel like, yeah, I'm badass, I'm on my A game, I'm doing what I'm awesome at. If you genuinely feel like that, you probably won't have a lot of anxiety. Now, the question is, how do you get that confidence? You get the confidence by proving to yourself that you're good. You do that by practicing, okay? So, it's almost like riding a bike. If you've never ridden a bike before, and then somebody gives you a bike and says, I want you to ride this bike in front of this crowd of people, all your friends and family are all lined up, and you're going to really embarrass yourself if you can't ride this bike properly in front of them, if you fall down, right? Well, you're setting yourself up for failure because you haven't practiced riding a bike. What are the odds that the first time you get on a bike, you're going to ride perfectly? Almost zero, right? Interviewing and public speaking is exactly like that. If you've never practiced interviews, really, you don't do it on a regular basis, you don't do that kind of thing on a regular basis, you're not just instantly going to be awesome and instantly going to be super confident when you do one. You're going to be nervous, you're going to be outside of your comfort zone, you're going to be unsure of, how to behave when different things come up. So the key to succeeding is practice. Okay, so that's why I recommend, do mock interviews. Go get a friend or a family member and just say, can you give me a hand with practicing? You pretend to be the recruiter, and here you can ask me this list of questions, or you go on Google and you find some questions and ask me those questions, and let's try and do this as if it were the real thing, and I'll, try and do my best. And, it's more practice for me, but you could give me some feedback too if you want to. And just do this with different people. And if it feels awkward doing this, that's actually good, because that's what you're trying to overcome. Now, once you do, say 25 practice interviews, let's pretend you did that over like a week or something. Okay, you got various friends and family members. Just let's do some job interviews. After 25 interviews, you will notice a change in your attitude and your behavior at the prospect of doing an interview. Okay, you will feel a lot more prepared. You will feel a lot more confident. You'll feel like, I got this. I've done this many, many times, so I know what I'm doing. Right now, let's say that takes a week. Let's say that takes 2 weeks. Okay, that's 2 weeks of your life, where you had to exert a little bit of extra effort to do this. But there's a huge payoff for that, okay? You will be a lot more comfortable in interviews, and, you will not, it's not all about how you feel, it's also about your performance. Your performance will be better. You've been asked a lot of those common questions over 25 times before, so you will not freeze up. You will have an answer ready. You will be able to speak extemporaneously, like off the cuff, a lot better. Okay, so that's kind of the secret to doing this, is just practice makes perfect. It's exactly the same way with public speaking. That's how you get good at public speaking, is you do it. You start kind of on the small scale in front of a couple of people. You kind of control the situation a little bit, but if you feel nervous, you feel uncomfortable, that's good, because this is what you're trying to overcome. Okay, so hopefully that helps with the anxiety thing. It's a long journey. It doesn't get fixed overnight, but if you practice, you can make tremendous progress in a comparatively short amount of time. So hopefully that makes sense. Lala Hart says, can soft skills get you a job? Absolutely. It's stupid, but it's true. They can. Because speaking from, look, you don't need me to tell you this. I'm sure you've had coworkers, or if you've been in school, you've had to do group work with other students. You've been put in a group, or you have to work with these people and do a project together or something. And, there might be someone in your group, in your team, that is very smart. Like, they're not failing the class or something. They're really good, but they're really annoying to work with. They seem like they hate every moment of it. They don't want to interact with you. They, when you ask them questions, it's like pulling teeth to try and get any information out of them. You all agree we're all going to show up at the library or something at a certain time to work on this. They don't show up, right? And they're just so off-putting, and they have such a negative attitude that you just don't want to deal with them anymore, and you absolutely have to, right? So let me ask you, is that the type of person that you would want voluntarily to work with? Answer is no, right? It doesn't matter how smart they are if you can't work with them and you don't enjoy working with them, because it won't end well. You know what I'm saying? So it's exactly the same situation when an employer is looking to fill a position. They could hire anybody. There's many different choices for a lot of jobs. There's a lot of people applying. What they tend to do is they tend to hire the person, I hate to say it, who they like the best, right? Who seems like they really want the job, like not just because they need money, but they actually want this job specifically. They want to do this kind of work. They have the right attitude. They seem friendly. You can talk to them. It kind of just clicks. That stuff is very important. It's a lot more important than you think. If you have the enthusiasm and you have the brains and all this, you could train people if there's any little sort of weak areas, right? But it doesn't matter. Somebody could have a PhD, they could have a Nobel Prize, but they're so off-putting and antisocial that you could hire them, it still won't produce good results. Or if they just don't want to do that work, they're too arrogant, they consider it beneath them to do it, things like this. That stuff's very important. So the way it usually works, and I asked this question in a public opinion poll that went out on my channel a couple of days ago or something. Or was it even today? I can't remember. But it's like you get the job, you get the interview because of your resume. The resume has all your technical skills. You got this education, this experience. That gets you an interview. Okay? Once you get to the interview, it's what you're like as a person, usually, that gets you the job. Okay, a lot of people go down to interviews and they act really arrogant. They're like, oh yeah, I got all the requirements. Oh yeah, I've got more than the requirements. This job is actually kind of beneath me. And sometimes they put on that as an act because they think that, oh, if I make out like I'm so talented, like I'm overqualified for the job, they'll be impressed by that and they'll want to hire somebody like that. It's actually not the case. They are looking for somebody who's enthusiastic and friendly, and they communicate very well. And you could talk to them. You could tell them, I'd like you to not do it that way. I'd like you to do it this way instead. And they don't get upset. They don't, they're not argumentative. They don't have a bad temper. That stuff really matters when you got to work with somebody constantly every day, right? So yes, soft skills get you the job. It's maybe kind of counterintuitive, but it's true. Yasser says, what's the most important thing to focus on during an interview with the hiring manager after getting through the screening step? Okay, so screening step would be, in this case, like they've read your resume and maybe you've done one job interview with a recruiter. That's what you're saying. The hiring manager is basically thinking, who do I want to work with? Okay, they care, generally speaking, they care less about absolute technical requirements. They care more about who do I want to work with this person. Okay. Now I know that's very general, but I mean, this is a very general question, what will get me hired? That's what they're thinking of. Recruiters are generally not thinking of that. Recruiters are trained to ask specific questions. They basically do two things. Number one, they check that all the technical requirements are there. So they care about requirements. The other thing that they do is they check for common red flags. Okay, for example, a red flag would be if this person is used to getting paid $100,000, this job only pays $50,000, that's probably going to be a problem. Okay? There's no point in offering them the job or going any further with them because they probably will refuse it because they want an amount of money that we just can't provide. Okay, so that's one of the common things they look for. Do they actually have an interest in doing this job specifically? Are they enthusiastic about this job? If they just want any job and they don't care what they do and they're really not into doing this work specifically and they're not interested in this company or this role, that's not going to end well either. So that's a standard red flag they look for. So recruiters look for those two things. They look for, do you have the technical requirements and are there any of these standard red flags present? Okay. Once they've sort of cleared you and said like, okay, you have the requirements, I don't see any obvious red flags, then you go to the hiring manager. The hiring manager doesn't really care specifically about that stuff. At least it's not at the top of the list. What they care most about is, do I want to work with this person? Okay. Do I click with them? Do they have the right attitude? Do we share some of the same opinions on important things? Right? That's what the hiring manager cares about, generally speaking. Okay. So that's the difference between hiring managers and recruiters. A hiring manager, if they like you, it's within their power to give you a job. That might be a stupid idea, but they could still do it if they really like you. I mean, let's face it, I'm sure you guys have all seen examples of that, right? People that you kind of wonder, like, how did you get this job? Because you don't really seem qualified. You're friends with the boss. Okay, now I get it. Right? So that's a negative side effect of this principle. So if you got to meet the hiring manager, make sure you have the right attitude. Make sure you try and have a rapport with them. That's very important. Hopefully that makes sense. Kevin Ronald says, I had interviews in two companies, I guess, and got accepted in company A. However, I am more interested in company B, and company B have not contacted me yet. What should I do? Thank you. Well, Kevin, look, I can't tell you what you should do because I don't know what your priorities are. If you're absolutely desperate for a job, you would probably stick with company A and just not negotiate. Just as soon as you can just get it, say yes to whatever their requirements are, get that contract signed and start working. If, on the other hand, you're not in financial dire straits, you could turn down this offer and wait until something more preferable comes along, like company B. Then obviously that's something that you probably might want to do, right? I don't know about the opportunities for advancement for either of these companies. I don't know if you put them on your resume, if they would be well regarded. It would be like a statement of credibility that you worked there or not, or are they unknown companies that no one else will know about? There's no extra added value in having that on your resume. There's all kinds of factors. So, I mean, what you're going to do depends on what your goals are. Okay. So, but this is a relatively common situation. There's a lot of things you'd like to do. we all have ambitions, but we do have an offer, and the offer is for something that's less than ideal in some way. Okay? Just remember that anything verbal doesn't exist. The only thing that matters is what's in writing. So if they've given you a written offer, that's one option. If you don't have any other written offer, there is no other option other than unemployment, right? So, okay, so I can't tell you what to do. It depends on what your priorities are. If you want to give me more information and say what's most important to you, or what you're wondering about more specifically, I can help you with that. But this could go different ways depending on where you are in life, what your goals are, and what your present situation is. Vivian, question. Any advice for job search after long resume gap due to staying home taking care of the household? No kids, and volunteering for charity. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So listen, if you are getting back into the workforce and you do the standard thing of sort of sending out job applications in response to posted job postings, okay, you're going to be dealing with recruiters, right? Now, in this situation, recruiters generally are trained that a big work gap is a red flag, okay? Because the reasoning goes that if someone hasn't been working for a while and they can't really justify it in a way that is watertight, then that suggests that maybe there's something wrong with this person. We don't know what it is, but there could be something there. We don't want to take the risk. It makes you a higher risk candidate. Okay. So, for example, if you said there was a long work gap, you had been out of work for 3 years or something, and they said, "What's this work gap?" And you said, "Well, I had cancer and I had to go for treatments, but now I'm completely cured. I got my clean bill of health, and after months of chemotherapy and radiotherapy, I'm back on my feet and I'm ready to rejoin the workforce now that I'm healthy." It would be hard to kind of poke holes in that. They'd be like, okay, fair enough. But if you said, "Well, look, I took some time off because I wanted to spend time with, I don't know, my husband, and I wanted to take care of the house. I don't have any kids, but I wanted to just take care of the house and, do that or reassess my life goals, or what." They would see that as a red flag. Most recruiters would see that as a red flag. So if you did charity work, I would emphasize that that's what you did. It isn't a work gap. I simply moved from working at a job to doing charity work as my main focus. Something like that. So it really isn't a gap. Okay. I just had a personal mission to do this kind of charity work and help people and really get into it and give back, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I did. And I feel like I've made a difference. I feel like I've got that sort of out of my system. And now I'd like to transition back to working as an employee. I think that would make a lot of sense for people. So don't mention the fact that, you were like taking care of house or you're a homemaker. Instead, just focus on, I took time off to do some charity work. If you say you're doing training, or you say that you're doing volunteering, or you say that, something like that, like you're working on yourself, in the mind of a recruiter, that's no longer a work gap. That's like, oh, okay, I went back to school, or I went and did volunteering. So there's no red flags with that story. Okay, so that's how I would do it. Now, if you can't really say that, if you maybe you did some charity stuff, but it was very little for the amount of time you were off, I would go, if it were me, I would go and I'd just take some free course, do a couple of them, just so you can say, look, I went back to school, I did some training, I brushed up on my skills in these areas, and now that I'm trained, I feel I'm ready to rejoin the workforce and start applying some of that extra ability I've given myself. Okay, so that's how I would spin it, something like that. hopefully that works. And to all the people that I'm sort of answering your questions, if there's more to it and you want to like add, like maybe I'm not realizing some critical thing, by all means, like give me more background information if that's what you want to do, and I will respond to that. Where was I here? Tomi says, question, how do you fix your resume to pass the research ATS system when applying for a job online? I saw some folks saying that almost 99% of resumes get filtered out. Listen, two things. Number one, I can't answer that question because, quite frankly, I don't care. I think it's not a very important question. Because, number two, I think that you should not waste your time on jobs that require you to go through an applicant tracking system. Okay, it's a waste of your time. Why do I say that? I say that because, number one, if they're using an ATS, like applicant tracking software system, if they're using those kind of filters, that pretty much almost universally means that they're getting tons of candidates. Like it's either an entry-level job or it's a job that like almost anybody could do. So they're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of candidates for every job. So many candidates that they can't handle the volume in terms of like a human reading the resumes. They can't go through them just with a human. Okay? If that's the case, those are usually not great jobs. Okay, you have no bargaining power. You can't negotiate salary. If you don't like any aspect of the job, there's somebody along in 5 minutes who will accept the conditions of the job and do it. So you know what I'm saying? Those tend to not be great jobs. If you're just going in with 1,000 other people, the odds of getting those jobs are very slim, and you wouldn't want really to get those jobs. It'd be kind of a last resort. So instead of focusing your effort, trying to win at that game, there are so many other more promising, more efficient activities you could do that not only will have a higher likelihood of you getting a job, but the quality of the job you get will be much better. Okay? And like you guys probably know what I'm going to say, like investigate the world of networking before you investigate this baloney, okay? Forget about ATS. Like if you just want a minimum wage job and you want to go in with 1,000 other people and compete for that, hey, look, it takes all kinds. If that's what you want to do, fair enough. But I'm telling you, there are a lot of other jobs out there that you could get that are better than this without having to worry about this kind of crap, to be honest with you. Okay, so if you still really want to pursue this, there are some experts out there like recruiters, a lot of recruiters who operate the latest like applicant tracking software with all the latest patches, and they've reverse engineered all the latest hacks and they've compensated for them. There are people out there that know that stuff. It's a continual game of cat and mouse. It changes every like month or two, because people try and find hacks around it, and then the applicant tracking software wises up to it and then like blocks that. So those people might be able to help you with that. Okay. But if not, focus on networking. Okay. And just so you know, if you don't really know what I'm talking about specifically, I don't mean, a lot of people seem to think networking means you just have to know a lot of people. No, you don't. You don't have to know anybody. You could have arrived in a town or in a city and you know nobody, and you do networking. What it is you reach out proactively to hiring managers, to people at companies who have management positions who could potentially be hiring somebody with your skills. Okay? You reach out proactively to them. And all you do is the most basic form of it is you say, hello, I'm here. I have these skills. I'm great at this. I solve this problem. If ever you're looking for somebody with those skills, look no further. Let me know, because I'd love to work for you. Thank you and have a nice day. Right? And you just send that out to lots and lots of people. Each of these people are managers in organizations that are in your industry that could potentially be looking for you, someone like you, right? Now, most of them, right now, when they receive this note, they're not hiring right now. They're not looking to hire somebody right now. So no big deal. They don't respond, but it's perfectly appropriate. But some of them will be. Just coincidentally, right now, they happen to be looking for somebody with skills that you have. So great, you just landed right in their lap. You got in ahead of everyone else before they posted that job publicly. So they're going to check you out first before they even post it. And if you work out, they've just saved themselves a ton of money, a ton of time, in doing a big, long job search campaign. And I can tell you from being a manager for many, many years, managers hate doing that stuff. Like, unless you work in HR, like if you just work in any other area of an organization, this is a sideshow. This is like some thing that's not really the core part of your job. It's a necessary evil. You just want to get it over with as quickly as possible, right? So this is a good thing. People generally like getting this stuff. Okay? So investigate that whole world. That is much more promising than fooling around with, like, how do I reverse hack, like, ATS systems? Okay, that's my soapbox rant on that for today. You're welcome, Vivienne. Charity work for over 13 years after attending college. Okay, well, good. If you think really hard, you don't have to think very hard, actually. You can probably bang off a whole ton of skills that you have demonstrated by doing that stuff. You can collaborate. The great thing about volunteer stuff and charity stuff, for the most part, is that unlike, paid employment, it's entirely voluntary. If someone doesn't want to work with you, damn it, they don't have to work with you. You know what I mean? They're not paid to be there. If you're an employee and you're told, okay, you need to work with that person, okay, you have to work with them, right? It's part of your job. But if the whole thing is voluntary, right? And they say, you got to work with that person. And you're like, I don't think so. I don't want to deal with that person. They're a real jackass. They're not going to do it, right? So the great thing about a lot of charity and volunteering type stuff is that, like, it demonstrates, qualities and traits. Like, you can't be super off-putting if you're working in, volunteer related stuff. You just can't, right? Because everyone else will opt out. They will not want to work with you, right? So there's a ton of things there that you could, like, say, like, look, I got this. I've demonstrated this. People don't have to work with me, but they choose to work with me because, and it goes great when they're working with me. How many of your employees can you say that about? Bluethdon, am I saying that right? I'm sure I'm not. I just assume I'm not. Thank you for holding these live stream sessions. You're absolutely welcome. Tommy says, oh, wow. Okay, I see. Okay, good. I have, this was ATS stuff. Listen, I got a lot of videos on my channel. You could check those out. If you want to go deeper into that world of networking, that's one of the things that I have in this course, if you want to go that route. Some people go that route and it works for them. No pressure, but if that's something of interest to you, I cover the entire thing, beginning to end, step by step, with templates and all that stuff, scripts. Link in description if that is something that direction you want to go. Yasser says, what are the 5 important questions that a hiring manager can ask you during an interview? 5 important. Okay, well, hiring managers, there's no rules, okay? Because the hiring manager is the boss, right? So if you're an accountant, you're wanting to get a job in an accounting department, right? You might talk to a recruiter, but you're probably also going to talk to the head of the accounting department, and they are some kind of senior accountant. They are a controller. They have, an accounting certification and license. They also have maybe other things. They're like a business evaluator or something. What do they care about? That's going to vary. Okay. Number one thing they're going to care about is like whether they connect with you, they click. Are you the type of person they could work with? So I don't know if there's like 5 questions, like standard questions they're going to ask. Now there's 5 questions that a recruiter will ask. You could say, what's the most 5 important questions a recruiter will ask? A recruiter is going to ask questions about your qualifications. They want it demonstrated that you have the qualifications that are needed for the job. Okay. So some things are pretty ironclad, like you need this certification. Okay. Do you have the certification? Is it currently valid? Yes. Okay. They will verify that, right? But beyond that, they'll look for, there's going to be a question about the future. There's going to be a question about the past. There's going to be a question about pay. There's going to be a question about like what you enjoy. Okay. So the question about the future, that's like, where do you want to be? Do you have any interest in doing this kind of work? And obviously the answer is yes. Okay. The cliched form of that is, where do you want to be in 5 years? Or where do you see yourself 5 years? They're going to ask you a question about the past. Okay. Why did you leave your last job? Were you fired? Do you have a history of quitting jobs very easily? Do you have a history of, not getting along with your boss? Do you have a history of being fired from your jobs? All of those would be red flags. So they're going to usually ask one question in some form that probes for that kind of stuff. They're going to ask you a question about compensation. How much money are you expecting to get for this? Because what they want to verify is, will you be happy with the money that they're offering? A lot of times they can offer the job to somebody, but that person, they're desperate for a job. They'll take anything, okay, just so they have some money coming in. But the reality is that what the company is offering is far below what they are used to getting. So as soon as something better comes along, they will quit and jump to something better. Okay, that makes them a bad candidate. The company's not interested in hiring people that are just going to jump to the next best thing as soon as it comes along. They want people that are like into this kind of work, that want to be here specifically and want to stay here. Okay, so they're going to ask you a question about salary. That's going to be a key thing. And they're going to also try and probe for like, what's your ambition? Are you interested in doing this work? Now, they're not just going to come out and say that explicitly. They're going to try and use like psychology 101 to ask it in some kind of pseudo sneaky way that is sometimes insulting to your intelligence, or, is just kind of childish, or it's just stupid. They'll ask you like, like where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then if you say anything other than like, right here, either in this job or maybe, in this job, but promoted, they'll interpret that as like, oh, you don't actually have any interest in doing this job, right? So is that 5? I think that's 4. The qualifications, the future, the past, the salary, and beyond that, there's a variety of things that they can ask you about. Probably the weakness question. They want to get the dirt on you, because usually everybody is hiding. It's like advertising. You sort of pitch like, here's the great things about me, but you don't volunteer the bad things about you, right? So what they want to try and do in a very kind of amateur way, in my opinion, is they ask these questions to try and get you to reveal the things that are wrong with you, right? And some of the dumber recruiters will just say it outright. What's the biggest problem with you? If we were not going to hire you, what would it be for? Like, and some candidates play right into that. They go, oh, well, I have a terrible temper and it's gotten me fired several times before. So, other people, other recruiters, they think they're smarter, and they say like, if I were to ask your previous boss or your previous coworkers, what would they say about you? If I said, what would you tell me about this person? What would they say? Would there be anything bad they would say? And then some people play right into that, and they say, oh, well, they'd probably tell you that, I have a chronic problem with showing up late. I mean, I do great work, but I show up late all the time. And the recruiter goes, okay, thank you. And then they eliminate you because you just gave them a reason, right? But sometimes it gets more sophisticated than that, and they probe for stuff. So probably the weakness question. That's a very tough question to answer off the top of your head and have it not be damaging. Okay, you really got to prepare for that one. They'll say, what's the biggest weakness, the biggest flaw with you as an employee? Kind of hard to not give them anything bad. So that would probably be the 5 questions that a recruiter would ask if there was going to be only 5. Tomi says, okay, understood, and now definitely I don't want to do that now. Okay. Listen, one other thing I will say though, okay, Tomi, is that a job search campaign, you don't just do one thing, you do a couple of different things. So I would do networking. I would also apply for, like, respond to job postings as a component of your job search campaign. And that doesn't mean like, you have to absolutely stay away from this stuff if you under any circumstance. It just means that I would make sure you're doing other things, especially networking. I would make sure that you're focusing the majority of your effort on that aspect, reaching out to hiring managers proactively. That's what I would recommend people of any age and any stage of their career do. But I wouldn't necessarily say you should never apply for jobs or don't try and ATS proof your resume. I wouldn't go as far as to say don't even do that ever. Depends what your goals are. Player Matheson says, do you think a person should ask a recruiter for the feedback on the resume or interview given after getting rejected? Ask about why they didn't get hired so they can focus on that part. There's no harm, but they will never tell you. Okay, they'll never be honest about that. So, I mean, there's no harm in asking, but if you're either going to get nothing or you're going to get a lie. So just be aware of that. You're welcome, Tomi. Reagan says, what if you just finished a year-long program and then they leave you at a cliffhanger without offering you the job? What does that mean? Like, is this an internship? Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean by year-long program? Is that an educational program or is that like some kind of job arrangement? If you could elaborate, I'd be happy to respond. MA says, hello, Bill. I currently work in company A where my salary is, say, 1K. I've accepted a preliminary offer, not final offer, at company B at, say, 5K, where resumption is about 3 weeks away. I'm currently applying to company C, a big player in the industry that can pay 8K. At the application stage, I am requested to provide my current annual salary base. Okay, please, which is the appropriate figure that I should provide? I feel my current earning is quite low at 1K, and my thought is that I have not started working with B to be able to provide 5K on the application. Listen. They can ask you whatever the hell they want. You are under no obligations to answer their questions, just so you know that. Like, that's what's actually going on here, right? Like, I could stop you in the middle of the street and say, like, I might have a job for you, okay? But first, I need you to give me your credit card number, right? You are under no obligation to answer that question, to give me your credit card number, right? I can promise whatever the hell I want to promise. You don't have to, there's no, like, that's, just be aware, that's the situation here. So listen, like, not to sound slimy about this, but you know what's going on, right? I mean, these people are trying to manipulate things entirely based on their own self-interest, okay? That's what's going on here. That's, after all, the reason they're asking you for your previous salary. In reality, your previous salary is absolutely none of their damn business, okay? It's personal. I mean, usually this is the kind of thing you don't disclose to even your coworkers or your family members, a lot of people. This is personal, right? So they're acting entirely in their interest. The more information you give them, it's like ammunition for them to manipulate you, right? This is like a negotiation. It's like a little dance. The more I know about your position, the more I can have the upper hand, right? So it's not in your best interest to provide them with full and complete information about your current situation and everything, because the outcome of that will be that they will engineer this deal so that it's just tiny little bit better than nothing to get you to take it, but they're not leaving any money on the table. They're not paying you any more than they need to get you to accept it, right? That's what they're doing. So listen, in return, in my opinion, this is how business works, you have to behave entirely in your best interest. There's no sense, in my opinion, of you being completely altruistic if these people are acting purely in their own self-interest and they're not working with you at all on this. They want to get the benefit of your effort, but they don't want to pay you any more than they have to, okay? So you put whatever the hell value on there you want, or you leave it blank if that's what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you leave it blank, it gives it sends a signal that you're kind of not being fully cooperative. Okay, in a perfect world, you'd want to give the impression you're being fully cooperative, but you'd want to still retain an advantage. And let's face it, this is personal information they're asking for. There shouldn't be an expectation that you just hand over personal information on request. Okay, so that sums up my position on this. Okay, you see, the thing is, legally, they have absolutely no right to discover your compensation history. They can't look up. There's no database anywhere where they can get access to that says these are the jobs you've had and this has been how much you've been paid, right? They have no right to that information. Companies don't have the right to that information. They try and, in a kind of slimy way, get around it by asking you for it. Can you just tell me this? And you want to seem forthcoming and cooperative, and also you just give it to them. And you lose. Because if they know that, the last salary you made was, say, 1K, they're going to offer you 1K 0.01. They're going to offer you, 1% higher or 5% higher. Little enough that they think you might take it, but not enough that they have to overspend, right? So you lose. If they don't know what you're used to or what you're expecting, they'll offer you a lot more if they want you, right? So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. I don't know if that helps any, but that's sort of what I say. I did a video on my channel called "When You Have to Give a Number," right? And I wanted to do a video on this topic too. I was thinking about talking about this because this came up recently. Somebody sent me a question. They said, I've given advice on how you answer the salary question. They say, what's your current salary? And then you give an answer. And in a nutshell, the answer is you try and not give them a number, right? Because quite frankly, it's personal, You don't want to be a jerk about it, but you say look, that's personal, confidential. I'm sure you understand, and if absolutely pressed, they say they make up some cock and bull story about oh, we need you to give me a number. It's which is complete horseshit. So you give them a wide range. Well, somewhere between this and this, this is really low. This is really high. Somewhere in there, would be fine. Both numbers are a real stretch, but they're still within the realm of possibility. So it doesn't really give them anything to go on, right? But then I get the question back from people, yeah, but what if they ask me again? It's well, answer again. Just because they ask you something doesn't mean that you have to answer them. This is our training, from school. You're trained to conform. The teacher asks you a question, you better answer, right? And then they say, well, our procedure is that, now you do this. Okay, great, but that's not my procedure. You're asking for something personal and confidential, and you don't have the right to that information. So you're not getting it. Do you want my bank account number too while you're at it? No, I don't give that out. I have a personal policy of not disclosing that type of information. It's personal, it's confidential. I'm not legally required to disclose that, and I'm sure you understand. Next question. Okay, wow, how's that for a ramble? Let's see. And you're welcome, Yasser. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Think. That's awesome. I have 3 decades of creative agency experience to level of European creative director, and finding it almost impossible to get a job, even though I've 6 design awards. What do you advise to get a job? Okay, I'm not sure what a creative agency is or a creative director is in I don't know what context we're talking about, what industry. But it doesn't really matter. You're encountering something that is relatively common. You see, a lot of people, and you could forgive them for thinking this, but they think that, okay, just because I'm qualified to do something, people will see that, and then my value will be immediately apparent, and they'll just offer me a well-paying job. Unfortunately, it really doesn't work like that. So you need to sell yourself. You need to show your value and your capabilities. Okay. Already today, I've mentioned networking several times. This is like the big part of it, is you're showing somebody. That's why it differs from you applying for a job. When you apply for a job and you go to a job interview, you are talking about what you have. You're saying, I have this, I have that, I have this. Now, they can believe you or they could be skeptical, right? Like you could say like, look, I have this capability. I have 5 years experience doing this. That means that when it comes to, I don't know, processing warranty claims, I know it all. I know how everything works. You don't have to train me. You hire me day one. I can process any warranty claim you have. I've spent my entire career in warranty. I know warranty inside and out. And they're just sort of, so you're saying this about yourself and they're just having to believe you. They may not believe you, okay? It's about you making representations. When you do networking, you're not talking about what you have. You're demonstrating your qualities, your abilities, and your capabilities by doing the networking. So for example, you don't have to say, they say, are you interested in doing this kind of work? You would say, yes, I am interested. Now they decide whether they want to believe you or not. Okay, that's in a job interview. If it's a networking type situation and you've reached out to some executive, somebody who's the head of the creative agencies across the EU for that organization, you've reached out to them and you've gotten a meeting with them. You don't have to, like you've demonstrated that you're interested in doing this kind of work, or otherwise you would never have reached out to them. You know what I'm saying? It's like volunteering. They're not paying you. So the fact that you've done a certain type of volunteer work, that demonstrates that you are interested in doing that kind of work because you did it even though nobody paid you for it, right? Why would you go through that effort if you had no interest in doing that kind of work, right? So that's the thing about networking. You're demonstrating communication skills, professionalism, the ability to interact well with others. You're demonstrating this right in front of their eyes. Okay, so it's not a question of you saying, oh, I'm a very charismatic person. They see it, right? That's the advantage. So, Mr. Think, just because you have a qualification, don't get me wrong, that's great, and that's a great feather in your cap. It's a great accomplishment. But you now have to demonstrate your value, because the reality is there are a lot of other people out there that have that qualification, and maybe they're all competing for the jobs, right? So just the fact that you have the qualification, that's good, but it's not enough, because you you could do the job, but so could 6 other people, and they're having to decide between which of those 6 or which of the 7 they should choose, right? So they're looking beyond just the fact that you have the qualification. They want to know, what can you do? Okay? So this is where you have to demonstrate other things. Now, usually the way that goes is, of all the people they talk to, you're the one that they like the best. You get along with them, you're friendly. You know, they ask you, can you, I know we said 9 o'clock in the morning, but can you come in at noon instead? And maybe another candidate goes, oh, really? You're going to do this to me? I mean, I just booked off the morning. That means I have to go pick up my kid and, blah, 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 right? It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. Whereas they did the same thing to you. They said, I know we said 10 o'clock, but can you come in at 2? And you said, sure, not a problem. And they're like, oh, okay, that's great. It's easy to deal with you, right? So you have to demonstrate other things about you that make them like you, make them go, yeah, I want to work with them. Because it's easy. You walk in the office and you say, thank you very much for taking the trouble to meet with me. I've heard so many great things about your company. I know the fact that you guys do this and this and this. I think that's fantastic. So it's great just being able to speak to you. Something like that. Nobody else said anything like that. And yeah, it could be empty flattery, but I mean, nobody else took the trouble. A lot of other people looked pretty glum when they came and they looked like this was just a chore for them. But you actually seemed happy to be there and happy to meet them. It's stupid, but things like that win out, So there's a lot more to this than simply having a qualification, okay? The good news is that it's not very complicated. I mean, if you've got all these qualifications, like this is going to be child's play to you, okay? But there is a few other things here you gotta be aware of. MA says, hello, Bill, please, how does one answer questions like, if your colleagues are not performing, would you report them to the boss? Okay, it's very simple. People hire people who are like them, okay? They have the same opinions, the same background, the same values, okay? So if you went to a very unscrupulous company, like for example, I don't know, you guys heard of Enron? Way back in the day, bad company, big scandal, a lot of nasty people working there. So if you went to interview with them and they ask you a question, they'd probably want to hear like, oh, I wouldn't report them, right? I'd give people the benefit of the doubt. I maybe don't have the entire story, so I wouldn't report them just immediately. I wouldn't go over their head. I would maybe ask them about it. See, maybe it looks bad, but maybe, I don't have the whole story. Maybe that's what they want to hear. You go to another place and they ask the same question. They want to hear the opposite answer. They want to hear, oh, you would report them immediately, right? Maybe you work in the safety organization, safety first, no compromise, no cutting corners. If you do that, you could endanger other people's lives. And we've had, fatalities here or something, so they want to hear the other answer, the opposite answer, right? You have no way of knowing, okay? You take your best guess based on what you know about these people and the role, right? I mean, look, don't get me wrong here. If it's an ethical question, you answer, ethically, right? That's the right thing to do. But if it's kind of a gray area and you don't really know what context they're talking about, and it may be a matter of taste or choice or culture, it's a guessing game. It really is. That's why they're asking these kinds of questions. There isn't a right or a wrong for some of them. It's just what's their style, right? Like if you were interviewing for a Supreme Court judge, and they ask you this, I'm sure the answer would be that you would report the other person immediately, right? But maybe not for a lot of other jobs, where it's not mission critical or life threatening or, you know what I mean? I don't know. It depends on the situation. Bluethdon says, what is an appropriate number of questions that an applicant can have for the interviewer? What would be too many? I'd say 3. I mean, that's reasonable. I mean, if you ask one question, it takes them 10 minutes to answer it, then I maybe wouldn't ask 2 more questions like that. But the last question usually should be something along the lines of like, where do we go from here? Like, what's the next step of this process? Will I be hearing from you, or should I follow up in like, a week, or, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. So that plus 2 questions before it, I that would be reasonable. That would not be too many. That would not be too little. That would be fine. Thank you, Alex. That's very nice of you. And same to Player Matheson, if that's addressed to me. MA, the salary question is compulsory on the application stage. Yeah, for if you're applying for a posted job, some of them, they do that. In which case, like, once again, they're playing games with you. This is like, really ridiculous sort of underhanded behavior. It shows a lack of respect, because what they're doing is it's simply a hurdle, right? If you fill in a number and the number is above a certain hurdle rate, or hurdle amount, they reject your application. It's just that simple. You ask for too much money. It ends here. You don't even get to the stage where a human reads your resume, right? The beautiful thing about this, what makes it so slimy, is that a lot of people intentionally, they don't give you much information about the job. So you don't know a lot of key things, but they still want you to say how much money you must have, right? So it's like, we're going to keep you in the dark about what you have to do, but then we want you to commit to a low salary, right? Everybody knows this is what they're doing. It's pretty bloody obvious to a lot of people. So what you do is like, here's how you answer that. If it's on an application, if you really don't know a lot about the job, for example, you don't know, will they require you to do mandatory overtime? Will it involve shift work? Will it involve working holidays, weekends, nights, afternoons? What's their policy on overtime? Are you the junior person in a seniority list? You always get the crap jobs that you don't want to do. You never get the desirable work. You always get the undesirable work. Is your boss a jerk? Are your coworkers insufferable? Are there all kinds of performance pay stuff that you may not get if they manipulate things? Like, this is all the stuff they're not telling you, but yet they want you to commit to a number. So here's what you do. All you do is you say, okay, all those unknowns, like the things they haven't told me, I'm just going to assume they're like all best case scenario. This is like my dream job in every respect they haven't told me about. And then I'm going to answer the minimum compensation question. It'll probably be a very low amount. Now, as I find out about, all these details, what is their policy on mandatory overtime? Will they make me work holidays, weekends? Can I take my vacation when I want, or is it something where I've got to schedule it around 50 other people and I'm the junior person? It's like, I don't know any of that. As I find that stuff out, I can revise my number upwards, But at the very initial stage, when I don't know any of this, I'm going to put a very low number because I'm just assuming that everything you haven't told me is perfect. So that way you get past that initial filter and you can find out more about it, right? And then you respond to what you find out. Alex says the beginning of the process. I don't really understand that. I don't know what that's referring to, but that's okay. Mr. Think says, thank you for the advice. It's very appreciated. You're absolutely welcome. Yasser says, what do you advise when answering the hiring manager's questions? Answer short answers or try to elaborate more? Okay, so listen, if you're talking to an actual hiring manager, this is like a boss. This is, if you get hired, if you get the job, this person will usually be your boss. That's what's going on there, right? A lot of times they're not going off like a script or, pre-planned questions. they're just asking you questions off the top of their head. It's pretty unstructured. Now, what you want to try and do as much as possible is you want to turn this interrogation into a conversation. So you'd want to give, it's not that you want to give really long-winded answers, but a great way of doing it is you answer the question, you give a little bit of detail, but then you end with a question back to them. So for example, they say, how much experience have you had doing this kind of work? And you say, well, I've had 5 years doing this and I've had 2 years doing that. And I went for an internship for 2 weeks in this other place where I got to see, this environment and everything. And, is that kind of typical of the people that work here? So you see, I answered and I answered the question. I gave a bit of detail and then I ended my response with a question back to them. Is that what you're looking for? Or is that typical? Or, is that kind of in line with expectations? Or is that typical for people that are in this role with your organization? Something like that. And then they start talking. They say, yeah, we have a couple of people that have that. We have a couple of people that have more than that. But, that's more or less similar to what we have. So now you're turning it into a conversation, right? It's less about them firing questions at you like an interrogation. And it's more like you having a free-flowing conversation. And then you say, oh, that's interesting because I know a couple of people that have done that kind of thing. And, what they say is that it's like really useful experience, and they say, yes, you're absolutely right. Because that's not taught in schools, but people get that on the job. And that's what really gives them some capabilities. Now you're having a conversation, you're clicking, you're agreeing. They think, I like this person. They seem like they would be a good fit to work with me. So that's what you want to do. And I'm sure nobody cares about this, but when you get to like executive level and how they evaluate people at that level, usually that's what they do. It's like a lot of long conversations that are unstructured. You don't get an executive sitting down with a recruiter, a 21-year-old recruiter that says, so tell me about yourself. It's like that's not how it's done. It's done with free-flowing conversations. Do we agree on the same values, on the same philosophy of how this business should be run? What do you think about this? Is this more important than that? And you kind of kick it around and, sometimes you agree and it's like, yes. And other times it's like, no, we don't really agree. We seem to have opposite opinions on different things here. Right? So that's how they tend to do it for higher level type interviews and things. It's a lot less formal, surprisingly. Sam says, what I need to say in interview to get an internship job in a big company? Well, that's a little too general, Sam. I mean, I have no idea what you even do or what's going on, what your goals are. I've done a lot of videos on various topics, so you could maybe start by looking at some of those videos and, go from there. Berwickton Tweed, I remember you from the other day. Years ago at a job interview, I had to interview with 3 different people individually. In the middle of the interview, I felt worn out and almost ran out of stories to tell. I have an interview tomorrow and I don't want that to happen again. Should I just remember more stories to compensate? Listen, if you had 3 independent interviews with like 3, you're saying you had 3 separate interviews with 3 different people. You can use the same stories, right? I mean, number one, if you told person A a story, you can turn around and tell that same story to person B when you interview them later. There's no rule against that. The other thing is that if they ask you a question and you answer with a story, they say, how have you demonstrated this particular trait or something? Or how have you do you have experience handling an emergency type situation? Tell me a time, when you were in an emergency type situation and you had to handle it and you did. And you tell a story. Well, there was a fire that broke out in the building I was in, and I was the supervisor, and I had to get everyone out, and I had to, handle it and call the authorities. And, so you tell that story, right? Now, even if you're in the same interview with the same person, like half an hour later, they ask you another question where the perfect answer to that question would involve you retelling that same story. Okay? A lot of people will think like, okay, I can't tell the same story twice, even though that story is the perfect answer to their question. They would say like, this job involves having some nerve. You have to keep calm under a very tense situation. You have to, not be overwhelmed. You have to be able to think clearly. It can be very stressful. There's a lot of demands, and you have to be able to sort through this and have the presence of mind. How do we know that you're going to be the candidate that can do that? And maybe you're thinking like, well, the perfect answer to that is how I handled the fire that broke out in my building on a previous job. That's the perfect answer. I did exactly that, and I did it really well. So you want to retell the story, but you think like, okay, I can't. I'm giving you permission. If the perfect answer to what they're asking you is still that same story, you can say it again. You might not have to go through as much detail because you've already told it, but you'd say, yes, the fire example was actually a great demonstration of what you're looking for. I had the presence of mind. So you're going to tell an adapted version of that same story to answer this question. You can do that, okay? You don't need to, memorize 250 separate stories because you can never repeat yourself in any way. If they ask you questions that are very similar about basically the same thing, and you have the perfect, answer for them, use it again. If they ask you the same question again, they're going to get the same answer. Right? So I'm just saying, like, if that ever comes up, don't think you can't use that example ever again. A typical situation is where they ask you a question and you pull out that fire story, okay, just for want of a story. But then later they ask you, a question that the fire story is even the more perfect answer to that question. And you feel, oh, I can't tell the fire story because I already said it. No, you can, okay? So just be aware of that. You see, this is a tactic that some recruiters actually formally do. Let's say you have some kind of kiss-off answer, right? They ask you about something that they're probing for. They say, what is your weakness? What's your greatest weakness? Or what's your weakness? And you give like a prepared answer, right? Now, the recruiter isn't completely stupid. Maybe they figure like, okay, that's a rehearsed answer. So I want to get past that answer. I want to get them speaking off the cuff about this in response. So what they do is they ask you essentially the same question again, right? Or they say something explicit, like they say, without mentioning that story, demonstrate that you have this, or what's your greatest weakness, or something. You're trying to get past it. It doesn't work. You can say, well, actually that story is actually the perfect answer for it. Of all the things I've done, that one encapsulates the most how, like it's my biggest weakness. You want to know my biggest, that's what it is. So then you basically summarize that. They're not going to get anything else, right? They try asking the same question again to try and get past roadblocks. Don't fall into that. They say, what salary do you need? And you give them an answer. And they go, okay, yeah, I know. But you see, I need to know, what salary do you need? And a lot of people will crack at that point and they'll just go off script and shoot themselves in the foot. Right? Just because you said it once doesn't mean you can't say it again. Okay, so just be aware of that, okay? Berwick didn't tweet, I have an interview tomorrow. Yes, okay. Oh, did this go on? No, I answered that one. But it goes on again. It says, it is for a very small family-owned business that is willing to train, no experience required. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't really affect anything, I don't think. You're welcome, Yasser. Best of luck. I love this name. It is not me. It's not me. It's you. I love that. That's awesome. That sums up a lot of, like, I know it's usually used in the context of relationships, but that sums up a lot of these like encounters with job interviews and recruiters and stuff. You know, I'm sorry, it's just not working out. It's not you. It's me. You know, that kind of thing. How do you respond when asked a question on something you know nothing about? Well, you'll have to be more specific. I mean, your response will change depending on what it is, right? You could say, well, that's never come up for me before, or, you know, like you could respond with a question and like, oh, you say, like they say, well, how would you do this? And you say like, oh, is that part of the job? You know, like, you know what I mean? Like it depends what they're asking you and what the context is. Right. Other times they're going to ask you like it's a common thing that you will not be able to anticipate every question they ask. Okay. Because they're always going to throw something out of left field that you haven't rehearsed. Right. In that case, like especially with behavioral questions where they say, tell me about a time, you know, there's no way you can prepare for any conceivable thing they could ask you, like in that form. Tell me about a time you, and then fill in the blank. So what you do is you have, say, like 10 stories, right? And they're varied enough. Okay. Like these are 10 stories from your past that, you know, they demonstrate good things about you. And they're varied. Like one is about a boss, one is about a coworker, one's about a technical problem, one's about a failure, one's about, you know, like that kind of stuff. So no matter what they ask you, you're going to pull out one of those. Okay. So it's like a fallback answer. Okay. A common fallback answer for a job interview, especially when dealing with a recruiter specifically, is you're going to talk about how you meet the requirements. So in the job posting, they've said, these are the requirements. You must have this education, this experience, these skills, you know, like whatever, right? So if they ask you something that like is just, you're thinking like, what, you know, they say, you know, what are the main qualities required for someone who would have to work with others, but do it outside of the typical context that someone in this role would need to encounter, you know? Like they ask you some BS question, like you're like thinking, what, you know, and you would say, you know, you would fall back on the requirements. You say like, well, you know, in this role, there's going to be many situations that a typical person is going to have to encounter. I've got experience dealing with a lot of them. And, you know, but the thing is, when you have this education and when you have this experience and when you have these skills, you know, what I've found is that it usually prepares you to deal with any type of situation and any type of personal interaction that you're going to encounter in this role. You know what I'm saying? I'm just falling back on the fact that I meet the requirements, right? So that can be your blanket answer for a lot of things. So there you go. Hopefully that helps. Have we got to the end? Yeah, we've got to the end of the questions. So if you have any last minute questions, there's 33 of you guys here. Let me know, ask them now or forever hold your peace. Unless I get anything, I will be signing off in a couple of minutes. Thank you to everybody who has asked questions. Hopefully you got something useful. You know, it's funny because I answer all these sort of just off the top of my head. And occasionally I'll sort of go away and I'll think about like something somebody asked me and I think about the answer I gave. And it was like, well, that wasn't bad, but if I could do that over again, I would, now that I've thought about it for more than a second, I would elaborate or I would rephrase it or something. So if you have anything else, ask it now. Otherwise, I was trying something new this week. Okay, normally I have this live stream on Mondays, not Tuesdays. I didn't put out a regular conventional video this week, but I did a second live stream. Yesterday, I premiered a new live stream called Leadership, where we talk about more management-related issues. So if you have ambitions to be, a upper-level manager or an executive manager, we talk about some of the concepts that you encounter in those roles. That's what I'd like to get into. That's what I'm passionate about talking about. But I've never done live streams about it, so it's a little bit intimidating. So I will do another one of those in a week or 2 weeks tops. And if you have any interest in that, tune into that, and we can get into it. Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you to my YouTube channel members. Thanks to people that support me on Patreon. Just a reminder, if you haven't seen it across the screen already, if you are a bit lost in how to get a job, how it all works, what can you do, what are some of the techniques, I have this course called the Get Hired course. There is a link to it in the description box of this video. So check that out. It's basically my entire recommendations for how to get a job, how to do a job search campaign, how to pass interviews, how to do your resume, how to do networking and, get into that world and reach out proactively to hiring managers, how to discover the jobs that are around you, how to tap the 80% of jobs that are not posted. Those jobs exist, but they're not posted publicly. So how do you put yourself forward for those? It gets into all that. So check that out. Also, there's this here, the $100 MBA course. If you are interested in learning business, check that out. Basically, it's a self-study course where I provide you with a reading list, and you order these books off Amazon or wherever you want to get them. You can usually get slightly older editions for literally $5 off Amazon. And these are books that are used in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA programs. So you're getting the same material that they're using for those courses. The only difference, of course, is that you're not having it taught to you. You read the books. Now, I provide you with many videos that sort of guide you through kind of the concepts, what I think are the more important concepts, what I think are the less important ones, and some extra insight. But you can learn business that way. It's unaccredited because there are no evaluations, there's no exams, there's no tests. If you just want to skim the material, that's all you care about, you can do it. If you want to go really, really in depth, you can do that too. It's entirely based on the knowledge you want to gain from this. Okay, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, and that's accomplishing a goal for you, check out the link in the description box below. Many people have taken that course. I've got some great feedback on it. So it also is sort of tied in with the weekly live stream I do where I talk about side hustles and entrepreneurship. That's where that stuff really shines. But if you have a conventional career, tacking on knowledge of how business works really enhances the impact that you have in your day-to-day job. Okay? Because then all of a sudden you understand what the company cares about more and what they care about less and why and how it all works. So it can help you there. So check that out. I'm just going to go through the last couple of comments I have here, and then that'll be it. You're welcome. It's not me, it's you. Berwickton Tweed. I'm sort of introverted. Any tips to start being more conversational at the interview with the hiring manager? I don't want to be rude and interrupt at the same time. Practice. First of all, just do some basic research on how to have a conversation, about maintaining eye contact, asking questions. I've talked about that stuff. So check out some of the stuff I've got on my channel about that. And then it's practice. And then you go out and you do it, right? And the more you do, the better you get. And after a couple of years of doing this, you'll be a pro. You will lose a lot of your social anxiety, and you will feel pretty comfortable doing it. You'll actually be pretty proud of yourself when you have conversations with, important people or people you want to talk to, and it goes really well. You'll think I'm pretty good, So yeah, that practice makes perfect. Learn some of the basic techniques and then start putting them into practice. Moonwalker. I'm currently stuck in no experience, no job, no experience job loop. I have bachelor in, physical chemistry. How do I not get depressed? Moonwalker, the thing that breaks that catch-22 is networking. It's reaching out proactively to people that have potential to hire you. Okay? So I've done this before where I've demonstrated this like live for people. Between Google Maps and LinkedIn, you can find all the potential employers in your industry around you in your city. All the organizations, all the companies that would have potential to hire someone with a bachelor's in chemistry, okay? All the chemical companies, all the industrial companies, like whatever. Then, when you have a list of all these companies, you go on LinkedIn and you use LinkedIn to see inside of those companies to the individuals that are in certain positions, like say plant managers or department heads, or people that have potential to hire somebody with skills like yours. Then using LinkedIn, you connect with them, you contact them, and you send them a note, right? As I said earlier in this stream, the most basic form is to say, hello, my name is X. I have a degree in this. I solved this problem. I'm great at this. If ever you're looking for somebody that has that and can help you with this, let me know. Thank you and have a great day. You're not asking anything from them. There's nothing inappropriate about what you're doing. You're just saying, hey, I'm here. If ever you're looking for this, please let me know because I'd like to work for you guys. I know you do good work. Okay? Now, most people, they're not looking to hire someone with your skills right now, right this second. But some people, through statistical probability, they are, and you landed right in their lap. And so if they talk to you before they go through the trouble of posting the job, because posting the job is expensive and time consuming for a lot of people, if they can just talk to you and you work out, that's better for them. Okay? So this might be a little bit of a new thing for you, this type of activity or type of thinking. But that's what breaks the cycle. Because you could have no job experience. You could just be coming right out of school, along with 1,000 other people with a degree in chemistry. But you're the only one that showed an interest in their company. You're the only one that you have demonstrated to them your passion for doing this type of work, your professionalism, your communication skills, your problem-solving abilities. And if this even resulted in some kind of interview, they responded and say, hey, you should come down and we'll talk. You're the only person of all the 1,000 candidates that they've met. And if they liked you and they got along with you and they like your enthusiasm and you seem to be asking intelligent questions and all that, they'll give you a shot. Okay? That's how this works. There's a lot more to it, but that's the absolute basics. It's that kind of stuff I talk about in this course. Okay, if that's an option for you, that's where I talk about. I have some free videos on my channel that talk about pieces of the process, but it's all in that course. If that's a direction you want to go. Okay, so It's Not Me is talking to Moonwalker. Yeah, don't get depressed. Don't get depressed. Listen, it is a problem like any other. There are solutions, and you can solve it. It's just a question of knowing what to do, and for that, you have to learn. Okay, I keep getting questions, so that's fine. We'll roll with it. Zachariah, is that how you say that? What if the interviewer is unexperienced and he keeps giving you hints for the answers he's looking for? Is that a good thing? It could be. I don't know. I mean, it's better than that's not the worst thing that could happen. It happened to me once and I got the job, but it made me feel like an imposter who hacked his way in by reading social cues of an unexperienced interviewer rather than deserving the job. Look, I don't know. I mean, this is my opinion on this. You have people competing for a position, okay? Now, in the beginning, it's intimidating for everybody. And any opportunity, you don't know. It's an unknown. So if you fear the unknown and you're like, oh, I don't know, depending on what they ask me to do, I might not be good at it. And I feel fear and I feel anxiety, right? If that's how you respond, okay, that's just a personality quirk, I think. Other people, they like the unknown. They're like, ooh, this is an exciting opportunity. I wonder what they're gonna get me to do. I'm open to doing new things. I mean, I've studied certain things in school and I've worked at a couple of jobs, but I'm interested in learning other aspects of it. So this is kind of cool. That's a personality quirk of theirs. They will not feel like an imposter when they get that job, right? But you're both equally qualified. Okay, so don't feel like an imposter. Okay, you're not undeserving of the job. The only way you could potentially be shown to be undeserving of the job is if they fire you for poor performance. Now, if that hasn't happened, don't think don't come to the conclusion that you're undeserving of the job. You're just as deserving of that job as anybody else. Okay, so that's what I can tell you. Moonwalker, yes, it's physical chemistry, quite a niche. Virtually no postings. Thank you very much. Do you have to deal with matter waves? That's the big question I have. I remember matter waves. I remember years ago in university, I had some problem. We were doing, it was, this is a blast from the past, but was it Schrodinger's wave equations? Something to do with de Broglie. De Broglie had some mathematical function or something in there, and I could never get it. I failed that test or whatever it was on. That it was an assignment or a test. It was on matter waves, and I remember I just couldn't get it. So there you go. That was my foray into sort of modern physics and physical chemistry and that kind of stuff. Anyway, listen, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for being here. There's 26 of you guys still here. I will be back next week, and we can do this again. I wish you all the best of luck. Learn all you can, try new things, don't give up. When we're looking for jobs, we're usually at our lowest point in our lives. It's one of the lowest points in our lives. We feel we have no confidence. We feel confused and overwhelmed, and it's largely an illusion. Okay, keep working at it. Something comes along, you feel a lot better about things. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks very much. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.